Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my picks for the 12th week of the Overwatch League or the second week of the Summer Showdown qualifiers. This is a pretty good weekend of matches. I don't want to spend too long talking this week though. I want to try to get this one to be a little bit shorter, so we're going to jump in and we're going to start talking immediately about these games. First game on Friday. The Paris Eternal take on the San Francisco Shock. This one should be a pretty good series. Of course, the Eternal coming off a big win against the LA Gladiators. The Shock, a weekend with a loss of the Gladiators and a very narrow win over the London Spitfire. So this is two teams kind of in opposite areas. The Shock are a bit struggling right now. The Eternal look very good. Historically, we would look at the Shock as the better team. So this one really just comes down to who can kind of have the bigger moment and who's going to be playing a little bit better. I still feel better about the Shock. I am going to pick them to win this one 3-1. I just have some concerns about the Eternal now that they have revealed themselves to be a really strong team. Going up against a team as strong as the San Francisco Shock is a very difficult thing to do, so I am going to pick the Shock for this one. I think it should be pretty close, but ultimately I'm going to go with the Shock. Second match on Friday is the Washington Justice taking on the Atlanta Reign. This one should be pretty good as well, but based on kind of what we've seen from a lot of these teams recently, I think that this one will go the way of the Justice. They looked very good last time we saw them. I thought they were a very impressive team. The last series that we saw from them, I thought they showed very good promise. Yes, they had a bit of some struggles in the Summer Showdown in the early, or the June Joust in the early weeks of it, but by the end, those were kind of a thing of the past, and they were looking pretty good, so I don't really have that many concerns about this Justice team. I think they should win this one, and I think they will take it. I'm going to say a 3-2 or a 3-1, but my actual score I'm going to throw up. I believe it's a 3-1 is my prediction for that one. Let's move on to the APAC matches, starting with the first one on Saturday. We have the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Guangzhou Charge. This one I think shouldn't be all that exciting. The last time that these two teams faced off against each other, it was a 3-0 roll in favor of the Philadelphia Fusion. I expect much of the same this time around. They have Funny Astro. They are going to have Shockwave soon if he's not already ready to play. Obviously, because of the way South Korean travel works, you have to quarantine for a bit before you get into the country. So I know now that July 1st has come, I believe you don't have to quarantine if you're vaccinated. I don't know if he's vaccinated or not, so I can't really tell you whether or not I expect that to be something that he'll play right away, but we know that he is in South Korea. He's with the team at least. He might not play right away, but he is there. So I feel good about the Fusion. I think they should win that one pretty easily over a pretty weak Charge team. Second APAC match on Saturday is a good one. Is the Seoul Dynasty against the Shanghai Dragons. We haven't seen the Dragons yet this Summer Showdown cycle, but I feel pretty good about them, to be completely honest with you. They look very good so far. In the last 2 months that we've seen. Well, the Dynasty have looked very good so far, and I think they have been one of the better teams so far in the Summer Showdown. I just feel like the Dragons are the stronger team, and I am going with them. I think this one will be a 3-1 in favor of the Dragons. Dynasty have struggled against them this season, but I think they will get a map. Moving on to the North America matches for Saturday. The Paris Eternal will be taking on the Vancouver Titans. This one does not really seem like much of a competition to me. The Eternal should win this one pretty easily. I think it will be a 3-0. Titans have had some decent moments, but nothing that gives me the confidence that they will be able to come up and beat an Eternal team that I think looks really good. Next, we have the Dallas Fuel taking on the Florida Mayhem. This one could be interesting, as the Dallas Fuel and Florida Mayhem have been decent so far this season, but with the Mayhem on a really bad losing streak, they have lost 5 straight games. I believe technically it's 6 straight games, to include their Melee loss to the Shanghai Dragons. Plus, you have a Mayhem team that is going to be playing Checkmate at main tank up against Fearless. I don't feel very good about this Mayhem squad. The Fuel still look very good. I don't know if Pine's with this team yet. I hope he gets there soon, if he isn't already, but I think this one should be pretty easy for the Fuel, so I think they take this one 3-0. Final North America match on Saturday is my first big pick game of the week. A lot of games I could have done for big picks this week, but this is the one I decided on for my first one. We have the Houston Outlaws taking on the San Francisco Shock. Obviously, these two teams played week 1 of this season, and the Houston Outlaws won 3-2 in 6 maps. It was a very exciting series, one of the best matches of the season so far, and we finally get the rematch we've been waiting for since then. I think the Shock should be favored in this series. I'm sure some people are going to disagree with me, and some people are going to say, well, the Shock haven't looked all that great recently. I don't think the Outlaws have looked all that great recently, to be honest with you. Most of their wins are against pretty bad teams. When you kind of look back at their recent wins, I believe they were against the Mayhem, who we know now are not a very good team. They have struggled a lot since the end of the May Melee. I believe they beat London. They lost to Atlanta, and I believe the other win they had was Vancouver or Toronto. Somebody also struggling a decent amount. So the Outlaws don't look very good. Or at least they haven't beaten many great teams in a while. So this is kind of where the Outlaws will be tested. They have a pretty tough schedule this month, but this week in particular, they play the Shock, and then they will later play... Actually, they had Titans, but I think they later on play like the Justice, and they play some of these other teams that are pretty good. So this is a tough match for them. The thing I do give in the Outlaws' favor is they have not played in a while. They haven't played yet in the Summer Showdown, so they'll have a lot of time to kind of prepare for this game. They've had like 3 to 4 weeks to prepare for it, so I feel pretty good about them being able to kind of come up with some stuff to hopefully pull out against the Shock team that will have already had to play Paris earlier in the week. And they had to play 2 games the previous week, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the Shock, though, will take this series. I'm going to predict them to take it 3-2. I still believe in the Shock. I still think they are a very good team. They've still looked good consistently throughout the league. And so, yeah, they've had their tournament struggles, and yes, they lost to the Gladiators, and they had a close series against the Spitfire, but being tested and being challenged is a big part of being a good team. If they had lost that series to London, I would be very concerned about this team. Yeah, they pulled it off and it was a close one in the end, and definitely does give you some level of concern because of that. But I still feel confident enough in what they've done so far that I think they should take a series against an Outlaws team who I need to see themselves prove to me once again that they are a top-level team. Let's move on to Sunday in the APAC region. First match is the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Guangzhou Charge. I don't think this one will be very competitive. I think they played not too long ago, and the Seoul Dynasty just completely obliterated the Charge, as you would expect, because the Dynasty are a very good team, and the Charge are not. So I don't expect this one to be very close. I expect the Seoul Dynasty to run away with this series. Big win over the Guangzhou Charge after what will probably be a loss to a pretty good, and by pretty good I mean very good, Shanghai Dragons team. My second big pick game of the weekend is the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Shanghai Dragons. The last time these two teams played, it was a 3-2 clash in the May Melee Regional Knockouts. So once again, we get to see these two teams play. This time around, the Fusion will have most of their roster together. They'll have those 2 additional DPS players, or at the very least, they'll have EQO. Plus, they have Funny Astro. They have some more pieces to now utilize. They have way more flexibility now. I really like this Fusion roster. But I still really like the Shanghai Dragons roster as well, and they've looked very good. Obviously, coming off a tournament win in the June Joust, you have to feel pretty good about the Shanghai Dragons, what they've put together so far this season, so this is a close one. This is a tight one for me. I think this one will be a really good series. It'll be difficult to know exactly what is going on with this Fusion roster because we won't have seen them really get to play a really good team before this one, with this kind of current iteration of their roster, with some of these pieces finally getting together. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I think this will be a very, very good team, and I think that this should be a pretty good meta for the Fusion, and a pretty good tournament cycle for them now that they are starting to be able to have their full roster together. You obviously want to see Poco on this team so they're fully together and really at full strength. But for now, as things stand, I still think they're a good team, but I'm going to give the edge to the Shanghai Dragons in a 3-2 series. Moving to NA, Atlanta Reign take on the Dallas Fuel. I like both of these teams. I thought the Atlanta Reign had a good performance, of course, in the June Joust. They looked pretty good. They were able to really kind of get their stuff together pretty late, and they seemed to kind of know what they were doing. But they were not enough, or they weren't good enough really to overcome the Dallas Fuel or the Shanghai Dragons, so they still have a lot of room to go. The Dallas Fuel, I think when the fact that there are no hero pools is just better for them in general. They'll be able to play whatever they want, so I think the Fuel should take this one. I'm going to predict 3-1. That's what it was the last time these two teams played. Could definitely be more one-sided this time around, but I just think the Fuel are too strong, and I don't see the Reign beating them, at least not at this point. Next is the Vancouver Titans taking on the Houston Outlaws. At least this game for the Outlaws should be pretty easily, because that is a very big mismatch for the Outlaws up against a Titans team. The Outlaws are still a good team, don't get me wrong. They still have a ton of talent, obviously. Just because I don't think they're going to beat the Shock doesn't mean they shouldn't be favored to win against a pretty weak Titans team. I still think the Outlaws are a very, very, very good shoo-in for playoffs at the end of the season. I still think they're better than a lot of the teams here. It is going to be competitive with them, with some of these other top-level teams, but I do still think I do still think they're a very good team, and so I think they should have no trouble beating the Titans. Final match of the weekend, Washington Justice take on the Florida Mayhem. It was a 3-0 roll. The last time the Justice played the Mayhem, I think it'll be much of the same. Happy 4th of July, Washington Justice. I think you guys are going to roll the Florida Mayhem. I don't have much faith in a Mayhem team that, as I said before, has a DPS player playing main tank. Last time we saw that was not very good when we saw that with Hydration, and so I don't really expect it to look very good with a different player in there. So to me, this should be a pretty good weekend for the Justice. I think they take this one in a 3-0 fashion. That is it for my predictions for this week. Want to kind of go quickly with these. Let me know if you want more length to these in the future consistently, or if you want kind of more short, me giving really quick thoughts on all of them. I don't really know what I like, what I prefer, but whatever you want to see, I will try to do. So that's all from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.